This lecture is going to go ahead and talk about more sophisticated behavior within Java. It's going to go over hash map, hash set, some other stuff related to random, which is a class, as well as a string. These are all helpful depending on what you're trying to do and will form some of the core of your future Java development work. As mentioned, we're going to go over some library classes and reading documentation. I've talked about JavaDoc a number of times throughout this course. JavaDoc is a really helpful product. I'll probably record an additional demonstration of JavaDoc for you to be able to see what it produces. If you want more information, you should review the book as well as Java's libraries or online documentation on how to create it. We'll go through some of the basics, but what we'll touch today isn't close to what can be generated. Java class library. Java has thousands of classes, tens of thousands of methods, many useful classes that make your life easier. But remember that when you use something like this, you give some of your control up to the people that own Java. You also give up some of your destiny on how flexible you can or can't be. And you sometimes take a performance hit, but as a rule, their code and their approach will be better and more efficient than what you have because they have larger degrees of people or numbers of people working on things where you don't. Library classes are often interrelated and they're often arranged into packages. Package is just a collection of one or more classes into a single binary, if you will, for you. A competent Java programmer must be able to work with these libraries. It's very true. You should know some of the important classes by name, like string, array list is two examples, and know how to find out about the other ones. Stack Overflow is a phenomenal website. If you key in just about any Java question that you want, it's probably been answered at least twice on Stack Overflow, but it's also got ways that you can post your own questions if you need help. Always remember that you need to know the interface, not the implementation of a class. So in other words, you care what needs to be passed into the class. You don't really care how they wrote the code on the back end. So for string, as an example, you don't really care what they did to implement string or the different methods and things like that. You just need to know how string works and how to work with it. Technical support system, a textual interactive dialogue is going to be the concept we're using for this. Idea is based on a 1960s MIT concept. Explore tech support complete. The program appears to respond intelligently to the user's typed input and go from there. There's an incomplete version of code out there called tech support. I'll look to post that out there for you as well. Simple main loop. It's an infinite loop until it receives something that causes the condition to exit. So while not finished, do whatever code. If the exit condition is met, set finish to true, and then let yourself out. This is a very common iteration pattern. I personally don't like it and go to extreme ends to avoid this, but it is certainly one that can do that. The reason why is if you never achieve your exit condition, you have an infinite loop. Examples of modularization, which we've talked about a couple lectures ago. Support system uses input reader and responder, looking at this class diagram. The main loop body in support system, string input equals reader.getInput, some code, response equals responder.generate response, system.out. Okay? Input is ignored by the responder in this version. In other words, the input goes in here. Notice it doesn't go anything to generate a response. So here they're just giving you nonsensical responses. Things like you're very smart, I'm sure. The exit condition. So when the input starts with by, meaning it could be buh-bye or bye-buh or buys or anything else, it will take that as long as it starts with BYE in lowercase. Okay? Once that happens, it starts sets finish to true. So where does starts with come from? Where do you think? Take a moment, consider it, but let's see. If input is of type string, I can tell you that that probably comes in the string class. What is it? What does it do? How can we find out? How would you look for it? For me, the easiest way is go to Google. But the quote-unquote right answer is look at the JavaDoc for string. But Google will have that online, and I'll show you an example in a separate demo. All right, reading class documentation. Documentation of Java libraries in HTML format. That's one of the nice things that JavaDoc does, is it produces a really good printout, HTML, clickable, browsable, interactive, really nice stuff. Readable in a web browser, Class API, Application Programmer's Interface, and let's see, interface description for all libraries and classes. If you follow it properly, all of that will be there. Your shop should be using it. If you're not using it and you're doing Java, you should talk to whoever owns your shop and see if you can get it added. I will tell you, adding it after the fact is painful, but once it's done, the documentation is outstanding. Here's an example of some JavaDoc. You click on string once you've gone to it. This is something that should be actually on your system. If not, it is online. Oracle has a published copy of this that everybody can look at. You can see all the different constructors for string. Here's string when you don't supply things, string if you use a byte array, etc. and so forth. There's a lot of different things in here. It is, again, amazing how much it has, and they spent a lot of time creating it for you. Interface versus implementation. The documentation includes the name of the class, general description of the class, lists of constructors and methods, return values parameters for each of the constructors and methods, description of the purpose of each of the constructors and methods. This is all the interface, what they're saying. The implementation, I couldn't tell you 2 lines of code that were behind string, but I don't care. I trust that they've developed it properly and that I will use it from there. The documentation does not include private fields and private methods. Why? Because it's none of your business and you would never need to look at that because it's viewed as internal only. And then the body or the source code would not be included. Those are all parts of the implementation. So for starts with, public Boolean starts with string prefix, test to see if the index or if the string starts with the specified prefix. The prefix is right here, it's defined, and then it returns a true if it does start with it, otherwise a false. That's kind of a snippet of the JavaDoc, but again, if you look at the real deal, you'll see a lot more. Methods from string, it has contains, ends with, index of, substring, to uppercase, trim, and so forth. That's quite a bit more, I believe. Strings are immutable. This was actually in an earlier lecture in a question that was posed to you. Are strings immutable? The answer is yes. And what that means is that strings don't change. They create new strings if you manipulate them. And we'll go through that in a little bit. Using library classes. Classes organized into packages. In other words, a package is just a larger unit of a class. So 1 or more classes are in a package is all that means. Classes from library must be imported. You did that when you did java.util.arraylist. But in this case, they're just saying that java.lang package is automatically included or imported for you. They can be used like classes from their current project. There's a little bit of a different visibility setting for those, but that's something we'll cover at another point. You can import a single class, like here, or you can import everything in there. It doesn't really matter because it does not insert the source code, but you go through, you do it, and it'll automatically pull in what it needs. From time to time, you have the need for a random number, and in this case, we're going to give you the implementation of that. So the library class random can be used to generate random numbers. It should be noted that there's truly no such thing as a truly random number. They're very close, but there's truly no such thing. Although for the context of this, and most of the people out there, it's random enough. So we have the import. We're generating the object. There's an empty parameter list here. You can do it with a parameter list. Ran.nextInt will generate a number. Look at the JavaDoc for the limits of the number, but I believe it's a positive integer. And then you go from there. This is an example because this goes 0 to the maximum integer, maximum positive integer. This ran.nextInt says generate a number between 0 and 100 and add 1 to it. So now, I'm sorry, and I believe it's 99. So now it's going to be between 1 and 100. Take a look because it is 0 to 100, or because it's ran and it starts with 0, I believe it's 0 to 99 plus 1. Ran nextInt says get the next one. So if I have a list size in here, this says go get me a random number somewhere in there. Notice we're not doing the 1 plus. Why? Because of what I just set up above. It generates from 0 up to 99. So there's 100 numbers in that group. So this would exactly line up with that concept. So if we want to send random responses, here's an example. New random, got the array list, fill responses. Fill responses has some kind of random code in here that puts like, thank you, you're wrong, excellent idea, etc. And then here it's going to go ahead and get a random response from an integer and put it in the index and then send the index back. Notice it's bound automatically by this. Okay? Parameterized classes. The documentation includes a provision for a type parameter. We've been through this a bunch of times with the get int index. This is the get method for e being the generic array list. And then a sample Boolean add. This is where add returns back a value. Pretty straightforward. Nothing magical here. The types in the documentation are placeholders for when we use, for the types we use in practice. An array list track actually has methods. Track get int index, Boolean add track, and so forth. Just to review what we went through just now, Java has an extensive class library. A good programmer must be familiar with the library. Documentation tells us what we need to know. Some classes are parameterized with additional types, and parameterized classes are also known as generic classes or generic types. With that, I'm going to end this lecture and begin the second lecture for Chapter 6 in a few moments. Hopefully this has been helpful to you and you got something out of it.